Hello, I am your host Peter, and you are here with me for Marvel in a Minute, presented by Crushing Comics. What is it? Well, I'm going to go through all of the in-continuity Marvel comic books that were out this week on Wednesday, August 29th, and I'm going to tell you about them in a minute. I'm going to tell you who the creative team is first, but then I'm going to have a minute to try to give you a little bit of a recap, a little bit of a review, a little bit of a reaction, a little bit of should you read this comic book. And once we're all through the books, I will give you my number one pick of the week, as well as what book I really think is worth catching up on all the way from the start. Now, if this is a little bit too short of a time period for you to really get into whether or not the comics are for you to understand where they're coming from or going to, I do a more extended discussion of all of the X-Men comic books in the Marvel line, and that will be out following this video, so stay tuned to this channel. And it's been about a minute so far, so why don't we wrap up this introduction and jump into all the comic books out from Marvel this week. Daredevil Annual 1 was written by Erica Schultz with artist Marcio Takara, color art from Marcelo Maiolo, and letters from Clayton Cowles. The main cover artists were Shane Davis, Michelle Delecky, and Romulo Fajardo Jr. Are you ready to start talking about this comic? Here we go. This Daredevil Annual, annuals have really turned into Marvel's way of letting other writers and artists audition for a comic, or for future writing of comics, when they haven't been the current writer of that comic. And Charles Soule's written all of Daredevil. This doesn't fit into Soule's run of Daredevil in the slightest. It's a flashback story that depicts the first time that Misty Knight has run into Daredevil. It's very much a Misty Knight story, not so much a Daredevil story. It is incredibly well executed on the fundamentals. It's well put together. The story flows well. I think the characters have great voices. This is a very early kind of jolly, way pre-Frank Miller version of Matt Murdock and Daredevil. This is a very early pre-Bionic Arm version of Misty Knight, and we get a good sense of who she is as a cop and what she thinks of this emergence of superheroes in her city, which eventually she will become one. However, it's not super significant. It doesn't really feel like a chapter we needed to see. It's not something super memorable, so it really just winds up feeling like an audition book, and for Erica Schultz's audition, I would say, yeah, she passed, bring her back. So that is 1 minute on Daredevil Annual number 1. Nothing really to read to prepare for this or after this. Get it if you like Misty Knight, don't if you don't. Deadpool Assassin number 6, the last issue of this limited series, was written by Cullen Bunn with pencils from Mark Bagley, ink from John Dell, Scott Hanna, and Cam Smith. Color from Edgar Delgado and Rex Locus, and letters from Joe Sabino. The cover art is by Mark Bagley, John Dell, and Val Staples. Ready? Here we go. This series purports to be Deadpool going to the Assassin's Guild in New Orleans, getting tangled with them and facing off against them, or maybe being hired by them. Whatever. What it really feels like is maybe Cullen Bunn was going to start writing something longer, maybe he was going to be doing another Deadpool sideline ongoing, and it, got limited to 6 issues, because the first issue doesn't really feel like as a piece of this, and this issue closes all the plot threads down in a very kind of unimpressive, unexcited way. The last issue actually teased like maybe we were going to get this big throwdown, and it didn't really happen, and even though clearly something has been occurring with Threnody, an old X-Men villain, and Deadpool, and Threnidy's been doing something on the DL, and also Deadpool's old arms dealer Weasel, who has interesting fate this issue in terms of him and his family, it comes into it as well. It's just not exciting. The choreography of the fights is not great. Actually, Bagley, who's usually really reliable for this stuff, a couple points I could not figure out what was going on with the physicality of his characters. And basically all this leaves us with is Deadpool kind of wishes he didn't have to do killing anymore, and he doesn't have enough money to stop that, and I have to stop this right now. I just can't recommend this series. It was just so average. I was even thrilled to see Threnody back, but there's really not a whole lot to say for it. The Edge of Spider-Geddon number 2 was written by Lonnie Nadler and Zach Thompson, based on a story by Gerard Way. Pencils and inks by Alberto Albuquerque, colors by Triona Farrell, letters from Corey Petit, and a cover by Jake Wyatt. Here we go. So the conceit of this story and this series is that it's reintroducing us to a number of spiders that are going to be a part of this Spider-Geddon story that's going to be written by Christos Gage in just a few months. And the first 2 issues have been spiders we've met before. We met them in Spider-Verse. This one is SPDR Spider. She's like a girl inside of a giant mech suit that's kind of a Spider-Man. And this story is great. It's really enjoyable. It's really fun. If you liked this character from Spider-Verse, or if you've never seen her before, it's a wonderful one-shot to get into her. Lonnie Nadler and Zach Thompson Thompson are extremely talented writers. I haven't loved their series for Black Mask like Dregs and Come Into Me, but I've loved all of their Marvel work, and I really hope we're going to continue to see them here. This introduces the idea, you know, in every Spider-Man alternate universe, there's all the Spider-Man characters kind of remixed. This brings in the remixed giant robot suit version of Venom. Towards the end, the resolution of what happens with the Venom suit gets a little bit unclear for me, but it's just a super fun issue, and if you like alternate takes on Spider-Man, this is a series where I think you could be really spending your time and your money pretty well. So, positive things to say about this. The previous issue with Spider-Punk, who I really like, was just an absolute blast of punk rock joy. Also highly recommended. We're now going to skip past Exiles number 7. Exiles is taking place outside of the regular Marvel universe, and unlike the Edge of Spider-Geddon, it's not immediately going to plug back into something that's happening in the universe. I only have so much time, attention, and money. I'm not reading Exiles right now, although I hear it's very good. So instead, we're actually going to move on to Extermination number 2, which is a limited X-Men series. Extermination number 2 is written by Ed Brisson, with art from Pepe Larraz, color from Marti Gracia, letters from Joe Sabino, and cover from Mark Brooks. Are you ready? Here we go. Extermination looks like it's going to be wrapping up all of our time-traveling X characters, of whom the most prominent right now are the original teen X-Men displaced from the past into our future since the end of 2012 now, so it's been a while, and also Old Man Logan, who's been in our future since the end of Secret Wars. Some really shocking stuff happened in the last issue. It was a slam-bang opening, and this issue has the massive satisfaction of seeing all of the X-Men all in one place in the study in the mansion where they try to decide what to do about this assault on the X-Men and how to keep the original X-Men safe, because clearly the assault is partially targeting them. It's not as action-packed and surprise-packed as the first issue, although there is some cool fighting in this issue, and ultimately it's just some really good character moments. Brisson really actually makes really good use of packing all of these X-Men characters into one place, and not only does it have a Where's Waldo effect where you can find your favorites, but he finds little moments with a couple of them, especially Shatterstar, where you're like, wow, this actually connects to who this character is really well. I have high hopes for this series. It's got a pretty big cliffhanger, and I think it's probably worth reading. Keep reading. Worth it to, well, now we're over time, but worth it to keep reading. If you want to hear me go on way more at length about this, tune back in for my This Week in X. The Hunt for Wolverine Dead Ends one-shot was written by Charles Soule with art from Ramon Rosanas, color art from Guru FX, letters from Joe Sabino, cover from Marco Cicchetto. Ready? Here we go. So, this dead end, it's a dead fish. It's not worth reading. I don't even know if I'm going to need the full minute to recap it. It takes all of the very minor plot threads from all of the Hunt for Wolverine series, ties them up into one bow that doesn't really seem like it's going to be required at all to read The Return of Wolverine. All you gotta know is there's a bad guy who has control of Wolverine. There, I saved you the money you'd spend and the time you'd spend on reading all 18 issues of this miserable experience. Marvel has been teeing up that we're going to be seeing Wolverine and all of this stuff, and it doesn't actually give us the goods. How many times can they say you're going to see Wolverine in this before we just stop believing them and don't read the comic book? Are there a couple of fun moments in here? Yeah, one with Tony Stark and Kitty Pryde, one with Tony Stark and Storm, another one with Kitty Pryde doing a feat. But really, it's just a massive waste of time. It doesn't really feel like great X-Men comics, and there was nothing memorable that happened in the issue. Big old thumbs down to Marvel for wasting my time. Jessica Jones number 2. This is a digital first release, and it's twice as long as a normal comic book, so it's chapters 3 and 4, and if this was in print, it would be 2 issues. Jessica Jones number 2 was written by Kelly Thompson with artist Matea de Lewis, letters from Corey Petit, and a cover from Martin Simmons. This Jessica Jones series started off a little bit slowly with issue number 1. Because Kelly Thompson is so well known recently for writing Kate Bishop in Hawkeye, it just felt like a slightly watered down, more adult take on Hawkeye. But in this issue, I feel like things really picked up. Not only the plot, but the tone of Jessica Jones is this kind of like constantly exhausted woman who's just never really into whatever the thing that she's doing. And it really came through here. I loved the writing of Elsa Bloodstone. Their fight against the river monsters in the Hudson River is so delightful, especially because the art here is incredible. The colors and the lighting on the colors make it truly photorealistic. It's super impressive, especially since it's all one artist, not an additional colorist. This story is really going somewhere, and it feels like something new, yet also very familiar for Jessica Jones, and I'm way more into it as of this issue than I was in previous ones, because the murder mystery is starting to cohere a little bit, and we're starting to realize what she's gotten herself into. So thumbs up from me. Marvel 2-in-1 number 9 was written by Chip Zdarsky with art from Raymond K. Perez, color art from Federico Blee, and letters from VC's Joe Caramagna. Ready? Let's go. Marvel 2-in-1 had a great start and a great concept. Basically, that Thing was pretty sure that that Sue Storm and Mr. Fantastic were dead, as well as their kids, but he needed to keep the hope alive for Johnny, and so he takes them on this multiverse adventure along with a scientist that they met who can help them use their multiverse jumping device to zero in on their family, and also Dr. Doom, who you generally don't want to take on a road trip. The beginning issues of this were some of the best comics I had read from Marvel in a while, and I was really excited, but this run has really tailed off in story and in art. We've got like just Thing and Torch living on this world, being normal humans and being grouchy. There's really nothing especially exciting about it. The art has really taken a dive. There's a couple of good panels, but the colors especially, is not Blee's best work, and it does not compare to the colors that we saw earlier on this run from Frank Martin. It's kind of just a very meh comic book, especially with the new Fantastic Four series launching. It kind of feels like, why have we been reading this if their return is not even going to be in this comic book? Now, that is my minute, but there is one fun cliffhanger at the end of this that maybe is going to help tee up what happens in the Fantastic Four comic, but based on the first issue of that, it doesn't really seem like it's going to connect. So it's weird to be like baited and switched for what's going to happen in Fantastic Four, having already seen Fantastic Four and knowing this is probably not the thing that's teeing that up. Like, how can you bait and switch us if we've already switched to the new title? So it kind of feels like a little bit of a time waster to me, and my opinion on this series has really taken a nosedive. Moon Knight issue 198 was written by Max Bemis with pencils by Jason Burrows, inks from Guillermo Ortega, and colors from Matt Milla, letters from Corey Petit, and a cover from Becky Cloonan. Here we go. I don't know if I could do this in a minute. I've been obsessed with Max Bemis' Moon Knight. I think he really, really gets the character and is taking him to crazy new places, crazy literally and crazy figuratively. Issue 194 introduced a new character into Moon Knight's past that helps explore his Jewish heritage, but also explore maybe the basis of his dissociative identity disorder. It was very well done. We had another arc between here and there, and this is another 2-issue arc. There's been a lot of 1s and 2s after a longer initial arc. That this arc now brings back that influence from his early life and challenges Moon Knight in the present. It doesn't explode as big as I wanted it to off of the last issue, which is actually a little bit like silly and funny. Like at one point he has to fight a dolphin, okay? Like if that gives you the scope of it. But it really is part of this overall arc of Moon Knight trying to feel find wholeness in himself. And part of that is dealing with old issues, both in terms of people and in terms of things that are haunting him. I don't think it's the strongest issue. It's actually one of the weakest issues of this run so far, but it's been a really good run, and if you're a Moon Knight fan, there's absolutely a lot of payoff in it, and the payoff of issue 194 with this issue, right? That's right, 95. Yeah, 194 with this issue is very, very strong. I love that Bemis is bringing new characters to the Moon Knight. Like, we've just done the same, like Khonshu, Bushwhacker Master, whatever his name is, Khonshu, Bushmaster, like over and over and over again. And we've already got like 4 or 5 great new enemies for Moon Knight out of this run, and if that's going to be the only lasting effect of the run, then thumbs up. But I don't think it's going to be the only lasting effect of the run. Miss Marvel number 33 was written by G. Willow Wilson, and with art from Nico Leon, color art from Ian Herring, letters from Joe Caramaga, and a cover from Valerio Schiti and Rachel Rosenberg. Here we go. So I actually caught up entirely on Miss Marvel this week. I hadn't read it since Secret Wars. It started out really, really strong, and it's declined to something that I would call low-grade happy, because it's still got that fun, slice-of-life, awesome, young energy of Miss Marvel, but it just doesn't have like the great impact that it had at the beginning. And part of that is that her encounters with villains are just getting like very samey and unexciting, whereas her time spent with her friends really is starting to feel like the anchor and the real reason this book exists. So this issue happens to be more of a villain encounter, which for me tends to be a little bit of a dip in terms of Miss Marvel, but the villain encounter also is giving us some ability for her to work out how her powers work and why she doesn't have as fine control of them as she might like. And that's an interesting plot. So I like it because we've taken the personal stuff and we've overlaid an interesting arc, and then there's a villain thing inside of that that's maybe not super fascinating. If you haven't been reading Miss Marvel, I do think some of the prior arcs leading to this have been a little bit more exciting than this one. The villain, by the way, is Shocker, and that is my minute. You know, this remains a really good title. I don't have anything against it, but like I said, low grade happy. Like, it's gone from being amazing every month to just kind of being more like pretty good to high grade okay every month. New Mutants Dead Souls number 6, which is the last issue of this 6-issue miniseries, written by Matthew Rosenberg, art from Adam Graham, color art from Michael Garland, letters from Clayton Cowles, and a main cover by Ryan Stegman, J.P. Meyer, and Michael Garland. Here we go. This is called Something Must Break, and oh my gosh, does Rosenberg break some things in this issue. Honestly, I could just do a minute of a scream, like, ah, and that would be my reaction to this. I have absolutely adored this miniseries, and the great thing about this is it's not only a 6th issue twist, but it's a huge cliffhanger, and there's nowhere specifically that cliffhanger goes. It's just leaving you with uncertainty, and if you're the kind of person that needs to be wrapped up in certainty and conclusion for every miniseries that you read, oh my gosh, are you going to be frustrated by this. But instead of being like an amazing character study, which all of the past 5 issues have been, this is much more of like a knockdown, drag-out fight with some big revelations about the villain who's been motivating some of the things that have been happening in the series. So it's not the one to pick up on its own. I would actually say that you could probably pick up almost any of the prior 5 issues of their own. They each work as a really fun little bottle issue. I would say just pick up issue 3. It's really entertaining. And you could backtrack or go forward from there. So don't pick this up by itself. Be prepared if you've been reading this to be ultra shocked, and if you need a solid, concrete conclusion, this issue does not have it for you. You definitely want to go take a look at my This Week in X next up on this channel, because I have a lot to say about this comic book, and I could not possibly fit into the minute. Honestly, you probably would have known my reaction more just by the minute of screaming. Runaways number 12 was written by Rainbow Rowell, with art from Chris Anka, color art from Matthew Wilson, letters from Joe Carmaga, and a cover by Chris Anka. Here we go. I had a fear with this Runaways. It's been amazing. This title has been a blessing, a dream, just a total runaway hit. Everything has been great. But I've been a little bit concerned that everything has been about the group doting on Molly. It's about Molly problems and Molly's growing up and Molly being in peril, and I was afraid that Rao was only just going to keep basically writing that arc over and over again. Well, last issue started to pull us out of that, and this issue is just a marvel. It's a wonder. The art from Anka is amazing. There's single panels here which I would blow up and frame on my wall as fine art. Wilson coloring Anka is a dream. There was another colorist for a couple of issues. It was fine. But the Anka-Wilson combination is amazing. This has 2 big interpersonal developments and no villainy. The first interpersonal development is one that I did not see coming at all. The second one is that we've all been wanting to see, and it is totally worth it when we get there. And then there is a kind of after credits reveal on the final page that is a major shocker, although not if you've been reading all of the Marvel lines. We did know that, my minute is up. We did know that this character was floating around, but we've not seen them in Runaways for a while. So high praise for this issue. Get on Marvel Unlimited, to your comic book store, or to Amazon, and pick up the first trade of this Runaways book. It is really good. It captures the spirit of the original Runaways and adds something to it. It's just utterly delightful. Venom First Host number 1 is the first of 2 Venom books up this week. This one was written by Mike Costa, who is the writer of the prior Venom ongoing, with art from Mark Bagley as penciler and inks from Andrew Hennessy, colors from Dano Sanchez Almada, and letters from Clayton Cowles. The cover is by Mark Bagley with Richard Eisenove. Are you ready? So Venom's been greatly expanded. The symbiote of Venom has been greatly expanded by Bendis and then by Mike Costa and Colin Bunn. He's part of this much bigger intergalactic story now. And this starts out with like shades of 2001: A Space Odyssey, of like the symbiote being originally discovered and it being a part of this unseen chapter of the Kree-Skrull War that we'd never before witnessed, and that is a retcon but was still kind of like thrilling and felt big. And then we come to Earth to see the Earthbound Eddie Brock in the suit, and for a minute it's hard to tell if this is from the 90s of him in the suit or the present day, which I guess could be a good thing, but it kind of just really pulled me out of this a little bit and made me realize like maybe the story is not going to be so significant and interesting. The one thing I will say for it though is that Mark Bagley is doing his best work I've seen on interiors for Marvel in a while. Definitely better than Deadpool Assassin and other things he's been on recently. Look, if you liked Mike Costa's Venom, this is very much the sequel to that, since Donny Cates has taken over the main book, and it's extending some of the plot threads that were already awakened in the Costa run. One very in particular, but my minute is up, so I can't say anything else. If you're into Venom for 90s feelings that you had in the 90s, reading Venom in the 90s, this is the book to maybe be picking up. If you want to see some absolute crazy madness, be picking up the ongoing with Don Cates. The second Venom book this week is Web of Venom Venom, which is like a short version of Vietnam. And it was written by Donny Cates, who's the main series writer, with art from Juan Ramirez, color art from Felipe Sobrerio, and letters from Clayton Cowles. The covers by Ryan Stegman, JP Mayer, and Frank Martin. Ready? Here we go. This issue expands upon a minor plot point, it was actually kind of a major plot point, I guess, of the initial arc of Donny Cates' Venom ongoing. And it takes us back to seeing some history of the Clintar symbiotes on Earth prior to the Venom symbiote coming from Secret Wars. At the beginning of this issue, it really feels like it's like one part Wildstorm's Team 7 about a team of soldiers who've been experimented upon partially against their will, and part of it feels like an old X-Files episode like Ice, where there's been like something uncovered in the ice, and what is it, and is it alive? And then it kind of just turns into this very kind of like basic throwbacky adventure with, I'm going to spoil something here, original Nick Fury and pre-Adamantium Wolverine. And it doesn't really wind up feeling like a Venom story at all. It doesn't really feel like it was something we needed to know. It feels like a really cool concept, and it feels like it was supposed to be tributing the Nam, which was Marvel's really long-running story about kind of regular guy soldiers in Vietnam, and it doesn't feel like it really got to either of those. I've seen somebody describe it as sort of like a weird Predator one-shot, and it does feel like just a random one-shot, period. A random one-shot, like in the Predator universe, where there's like a monster in the forest and you fight it and then it's gone. Like, it doesn't really feel like we got anywhere, and as much of a fun surprise it was to see that it was a Nick Fury and Wolverine story, any of those other things, the Nam or Team 7 or X-Files, seems like it would have been a lot more interesting. X-23 issue number 3 was written by Mariko Tamaki with art from Juan Cabal, colors from Nolan Woodard, letters from Corey Petit, and a cover by Mike Choi and Jesus Abertov. Here we go. This series is a lot less funny than the Tom Taylor Wolverine series, a lot more contemplative. It's really taking a look at what it means to be a human when you're a human being that is a clone. So you've got to find your own identity with the lingering knowledge that your identity has a lot to do with somebody else's identity. And the way that Tamaki is doing that is comparing and contrasting X-23 and her clone sidekick little sister, Honey Badger, with the X-Men Stepford Cuckoos, which are all kind of clones of Emma Frost. And somehow this series has a great feel to it. Like, the story feels like something ripped out of the pages of Grant Morrison's New X-Men or Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men. Juan Cabal, who's one of the best artists at Marvel right now, is doing his own super clean artwork, but it also feels like it has hints of Frank Quitely or maybe even John Cassaday. So that's really cool, but I don't know if Tamaki's really hit her rhythm on the writing yet. It doesn't sound like Laura, and I just feel like there's not enough writing. We need like more narration or more speaking, and she's just stop. It's just not there. So like, I think you got to tune into This Week in X to hear me talk about this, because I have a lot more to say about it, more so than I could do even with another minute. X-Men Blue number 34, written by Colin Bunn, with art from Marcus Toe, color art from Matt Milla, letters from Joe Caramaga, and a cover by R.B. Silva and Rain Barreto. Ready? Here we go. This pulls together a couple of plot threads that have been going on for a while in Bunn's book. We have Magneto in the future facing off against the original X-Men, which has been displaced to our present and then grew up in our present to live on to the future. Ultimately, we really don't get a lot from this story other than a little bit about Magneto's mindset, which seems to be indicating that he's moving in the direction of being a villain again, based on some of the things that he went through in the Mother Vine arc a little bit earlier this year in X-Men Blue. I can't strongly recommend this issue. I feel like it's just wheel spinning. Especially because, as we've already talked about Extermination, that feels like it's going to be the end of the original X-Men plot, and so if it's not going to end in their own series, why are we even still publishing this series? It just feels like a very weird coincidence of timing, and it's kind of like made the end of this series a lame duck. That said, the art here is amazing. Marcus Toe is incredible. I hope we're going to be seeing him on some more X-Men books in the future. I don't really have a whole lot else to say about this, other than this Magneto feels like an ultra-simplified version of the Bunn Magneto we began with in his Magneto series prior to Secret Wars. If you want to hear more about this one, definitely tune back in for Week in X. I have a lot more to say. Finally, this is not an in-continuity comic book, but I do have to give a shout to X-Men Grand Design Second Genesis number 2 by Ed Piskor. This series' conceit is that it's recapping all of the history of the X-Men. It started with 2 issues that covered the entire Silver Age X-Men right up until Giant Size X-Men. Now these 2 issues have covered from Giant Size X-Men all the way through around the mid-180s of X-Men, so Chris Claremont's, the first half of Chris Claremont. I will say that the last issue of this was really good, but if we're just recommending the issue based on what happened this week, I can't recommend this. It makes some major changes to X-Men continuity in order to streamline the story, and the story just ain't that streamlined as a result. I feel like if you're going to make changes, in the series that's meant to be the Bible of X-Men continuity, so you don't have to read all the issues. Don't make changes that actually improve it, right? If you didn't improve or streamline the story, why are you changing my damn story? So I go into a lot more detail in this in terms of what got changed and why I don't like it in this week in X, but I definitely think the first 3 issues that have happened already were worth reading and picking up. Now we're here with my pick of the week. I actually have to make the pick while the clock is running. You know, this week was just not as strong for me as last week. I was so excited to read all of those books. I feel like the easy thing to say would be New Mutants, Dead Souls, because it like hit me so hard and made me want to scream. Or maybe Extermination, because it looked so good. I'm just like looking at my list down here. But honestly, I think the real standout and the one that's going to stick with me is probably Runaways, just because it had such big development from the Runaways characters and it's so gorgeous. So if I only had to pick one book of the week to recommend to you this week, it would absolutely be Runaways number 12. That said, I don't know if you really can appreciate what's going on in it if you haven't read Runaways before, but it introduces the characters really well. It gives us a sense of who all they are. So you know what? Maybe you could just pick it up and decide that you love the Runaways based on this issue. Maybe you don't really need to know their whole history. I think as a single issue, it was pretty strong and just utterly, utterly gorgeous. So if I could tell you to just try one thing this week, I think it's far and away Runaways 12 without anything else this week getting anywhere close. Next, I've got to pick a catch-up of the week. If I were to tell you, get all the way caught up on this title, what would it be? Oh boy. Well, not the Daredevil Annual because it's a one-shot, not Deadpool Assassin, I didn't like it. Edge of Spider-Geddon, you could read Spider-Verse, but like, Extermination, really you would just be reading one issue. Certainly not Hunt for Wolverine, not Marvel 2-in-1 because it's like a dead end. I know you think I'm going to say New Mutants Dead Souls, and if you're the big X-Men fan that's watching this, yes, absolutely catch up on New Mutants Dead Souls. It's been incredible. The first 5 issues were all top-notch. It's already my number 2 series of the year, of all comics, not just of X-Men comics or Marvel comics, but like comics, and I read a lot of freaking comic books. But if we're talking about catching up on a long arc of a series that you're going to really appreciate to get to the current issue and appreciate, I think it's got to be Moon Knight. Max Bemis is doing incredible things for the character. It's transformative, but it's also respectful of his history. And there's definitely an arc to it that's leading up to his final issue with 200, which is going to be the final issue of this run. So now is the time to get on board, appreciate what he's doing. The art has been strong throughout. And if you're a Moon Knight fan or not a Moon Knight fan, I think you're really going to like it. That's it. All right, folks, I've got 1 minute to give you an outro. This has been Marvel in a Minute. I covered all of the Marvel books this week in a minute. This is pretty early in the run of this show, so even though we're out of the pilot episode with many improvements suggested by you in the comments, I need to know if this is worth watching for you. You need to tell me in a comment below, do you like it or not? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What could I be doing more to help you, given that I only have 60 seconds to help you within? Because I really love to keep doing this. I read a lot of Marvel comic books, and you know, I could just be waiting 6 months to catch up on Marvel Unlimited, but I want to read them now so I can talk about them with you. So tell me how I could be doing that better. And you know what? Maybe you just want to put this in your pocket for 6 months and get ready for what to cherry pick on Marvel Unlimited when it hits Marvel Unlimited. That's cool too. If you look in the comments below or my official words in the video below, you will see that I've given you links not only to where these things happen in the video, but also to Crush and Crisis, my website, so you can find how past issues of each of these series have been collected and how these issues will eventually be collected in trade paperbacks like you see on my shelves here. That's all the time I've got. Thank you so much for tuning into Marvel in a Minute. Please click like and subscribe below if you want to see more videos like this from me, Peter, your host here on Crushing Comics.